Ready? Hi, my name's Dale Adams of Planning Ahead of Time, and this week's Pat Chat is with Ruth. Ruth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Ruth Jewell. I'm a civil funeral celebrant. I trained 6 years ago, got my level 3 diploma with civil ceremonies, and I'm just at the moment started my level 4 qualification, which is a new qualification for advanced funeral celebrancy. So I'm working alongside my work as a celebrant at that as well, which is quite challenging, but very enjoyable and very interesting.
Well, it sounds like you just want to keep studying and keep improving.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, it's really important. And I've seen the industry change a lot in the last 6 years. So, where maybe families didn't realize they had choices and they could make the services really unique to them, they've realized that gradually over that 6 years. And I think it helped a lot with COVID in a way that we had to think outside the box to find solutions for services, and therefore people realized that they could make decisions themselves and they could celebrate somebody's life in a way that reflected that person, and they didn't have to follow the more Victorian tradition of the way we used to do things. So for me, training and improving my knowledge is really important, and part of the course is about inclusion, and I was very fortunate I was able to help them with a lot of research on that, and I've passed that bit, you'll be pleased to know. But for me, that's really key. When you've got somebody with any type of need, be that a physical or mental, that we can support them within that. And it might just be that they have a different language to us. So it might be then me getting the script translated for them. It might be that we have somebody there signing during the service, or it might just be me arranging for the person to go in and understand the space and where they're going to be speaking and things before the service starts. So, those things are really important. And actually, I've taken a great deal from the research I've done within that part of my training, as well as writing it. So, doing the research for them. So yeah, that's been really helpful. So I'm really keen to keep improving and keep learning all the time.
Yeah. There's a statement on your website which I love, which is a funeral is not a day in a lifetime. It is a lifetime in a day. And I'd not heard that before, but I thought that really resonated with me about it being a celebration.
Yeah, I found that when I started searching about funeral celebrants, and I can't find who said it, unfortunately. So I can't attribute it to anybody, but exactly the same as you, it really resonated with me that we have one chance to celebrate that person on that day, and we need to bring their whole life together in that moment and celebrate it in the best way we possibly can. And some of that for me is about people thinking in advance what they want and talking to their families about how they want their service to be and their life to be remembered. So planning ahead for me is something that I constantly talk to people about, and I go and give talks to WIs and U3A groups and anybody that will have me, so that I can talk to them about that and encourage them to write their wishes, or at the very least tell their family stories of their youth, things that people wouldn't necessarily know, what music they would like to have on the day. I love it when somebody records a video for us to play on the day, and it's them talking about their life, or them talking about the people that matter to them, them saying thank you, those types of things. And I think, if we can do that. I planned my funeral when I was 15 years old,
Wow.
way before I even knew about funeral celebrancy. And that was because um, I wanted, I lived along the road from the crematorium in Cheltenham, and every half an hour a hearse went by. And in those days, we stopped and we paid our respects and we bowed our heads. So I would get out the gate ready to run for the bus down the road, and I'd miss it because I stopped and bowed my head. So I vowed then I would never go in a hearse. But to me, they just didn't sum up who I was. So I'm going in an open top sports car
Oh,
with
no.
my coffin wedged into the passenger seat. And so I'll be sort of upright. I'm probably squashed in the bottom by then. They're going to have to brace me in somehow. And I want everybody to have a glass of champagne to toast me, because they toast they wet the baby's head, and we toast the couple when they marry. So, you know, every celebration. And I want lots of bubbles blown, because I love bubbles. That's, you know, the joy of seeing the air filled with bubbles. And my ashes are going in a firework. When I found out that could happen, that was absolutely me. Let me go out with a bang, so nobody has to worry about what to do with them. They don't have to put them in the bottom of the wardrobe. So yeah, and now as a celebrant, I've written my service, obviously with space for other people to speak to. But yeah, I'm really keen on that.
Yeah, I know a friend of mine, her ashes went up in fireworks over the local park. So
Yeah.
I have known that done. I didn't know at the time that it could be done a few years ago now. And I was like, really? But fantastic. And it totally summed up the person she was. So that was nice. And I do see, yeah, that you truly advocate constantly, you say, about people talking about end of life, people discussing it. And I mean, you and I met recently at the Dead Good Death Festival in Coventry. It was the first time we met, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and actually, people expect these things to be morbid, but you and I had a right laugh. We giggled for quite a while. So, you know, it can actually be quite good and expressive to be able to talk about these things and know that you're being heard and not being judged for the things you're coming out with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I try and do street fairs with one of my local undertakers, and we lean on the coffin. We have a coffin there, and people come up and don't always realise that's what's there. They start to talk, and then they suddenly realise that they're talking to you across a coffin, or they're stood beside. We're at the front and stood beside them, and they're leaning on it too. And then they realise, and then they're like, "Oh, what's there?" We say, "Well, our handbags and our coats, and you know," and we have a laugh about it, but actually they suddenly realise that that's okay. You know, it's just a receptacle. It's nothing to be scared of. And those things for me, you know, let's put those barriers down. It's part of life. We know we're going to die. It's the only guarantee we have in our lives. So let's talk about it openly. Let's accept it, and let's make it a celebration of our life whenever the time comes. And for me, that really is important. And I tell such precious stories when I get you know, it's such an honour to stand there. I did the same thing today, or to enable the family to tell those stories and the friends. And I just think they're such precious things. And that's why I've been working on the Life in Words project.
Yes, I was about to say exactly the same thing. And I know that obviously this has led you to this new project. So can you share a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I was standing there every week, and I'm telling these incredible stories, and the families share so much information. And I realised that within a generation or two, those stories will be lost. You know, I don't know anything about my great grandparents, you know, that their stories have gone now. We all know that, you know, we don't keep videos anymore. We don't even keep DVDs anymore, do we? And cine, I mean, I've just put our family cine, it's all been upgraded so that we can watch it. But it's, you know, it's very tired now. So even those things, and that's got no sound on it. So we're losing so much over time. And I knew that back in I think it was the 1700s, but don't quote me on that, they kept 50 scripts in Germany from funerals, and those are still used by researchers today, which is incredible. You know, they're hundreds of years old, but they have value to social historians, for example. And so I set about trying to find somebody who would help me save scripts for the future, a repository of some sort, and a way they could be researched. And it took me a long time. Everyone I spoke to was really keen, but nobody had the funding or the availability to store them. And eventually I delivered a service for a beautiful lady and her partner and I were talking about it, and he heads up a department in Birmingham University, and he said, I think this is something we could do, but obviously the time wasn't right to discuss it. So a year later we got together, and the project has grown wings, which is incredible, and mind-blowingly, actually, for me, the university are going to host it once we've got the funding in place, which is quite scary, the figures that are needed to do a research project like this. But we will initially look for 5,000 scripts, and we will just ask anybody to donate those. So they don't have to be Celebrant led, they could be family led, they could be clergy led, any type of funeral service which tells somebody's story is what we're looking for. And we're going to save the whole script, because often it's not just the eulogy part, the life story part that tells the story, it's within the whole script. And that means that the linguistics department can look at how it's written, whether we use a different tone when we speak at a funeral, whether family members write differently to how the celebrant writes, and all of those things. So actually, whilst it's really interesting for social historians, and they will take a lot from the project, lots of other departments, including the physics department, how, I don't know, have said they could use them. So that's really interesting to me. And they will be coded so that certain things can be pulled from them easily, which will be the job of the researchers, not me, thank goodness. But yeah, that's the aim. And we're aiming to launch it towards the end of this year, probably, once the funding and the ethics are all in place. But we've already had so much support for it. It's been incredible. And I think those scripts will make a difference in the future because of the research that can be done using them. So the people who donate them, their loved one will make a difference for years and years to come, so they might not be with us anymore, and they might just still be in your memories, but actually, a bit like we hope that people will donate body parts, that actually the words within that script and the story of people's lives will continue to make a difference. And the Oxford Archive have agreed to keep them forever. So they will always be available to be searched. They'll never be put away on a shelf and not be available, which I think is incredible.
So this small idea has just grown and grown and grown, because I mean, you're literally saying these people host this and these people research that, and it's beneficial to various departments, including physics, and people are going to store these and keep them forever. I mean, that's huge, Ruth, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is mind-blowing. It literally is mind-blowing. Every time I talk about it, I'm like, it can't possibly have come from nothing to this, and yet it absolutely is. And the more people we talk to, the more people are on board and are behind us with it, and funeral directors and other celebrants and the families, because we needed some test ones to start with to see how it would work. So I just went out ad hoc to some of the families. I picked about 50 over the 6 years I've been doing it, and it's within 24 hours the majority of them had come back and said, yes, please take the script, we'd love to be a part of this. This is really special, and that was just mind-blowing alone, let alone the way it's grown. And I've been very fortunate that Paul, who's working on the project with me from the university, he's been incredible. He's got wealth of knowledge and has been able to make it possible and to grow that idea. But yeah, and I think as well, it's not just the students in Birmingham who will be using it. It'll be students from anywhere around the world. It will be any researcher that needs the information will be able to access it, and family historians ultimately too. So they will be able to go back and read the stories that they didn't know, which will be incredible.
The moment you start speaking about it, you just light up. It's obviously just a real project of passion and so heart-led. It's really nice to hear you talking about it. So it'd be lovely to see this coming up. Have you got anything sort of online where people can maybe follow the work that you're doing in this regard?
Yeah, so we've got a website, lifeinwordsproject.co.uk, which is just at the moment got a holding page there with a bit of information, and that will get populated as time goes on. So yes, and then obviously we will have social media and things so that we can update people more. But that's where we're at the moment. I had a meeting with Paul yesterday, and things have, we know now how much funding we need, those scary figures, and we're moving things forward from there. So yes, it's quite incredible, and yeah, I am really passionate about it. But that's because I told another story this morning, and I'm going to meet a family later and learn more stories from them. And I just think that even when people think they haven't led a remarkable life, they have, and there's so much richness in there. And even if they've had a really difficult life, that's still important to tell that story. We don't want everything with a rosy glow in the project. We need to understand that some people have really had a tough time and really had to fight for what they wanted in life. And that for me is just as valuable as one where somebody has gone out and patented some remarkable thing they've invented. Those are just as important, but everybody's unique. Everybody's story is unique, and we need to hear those stories. And that's part of planning in advance and making sure that your family know those things. We often, I go and see a family and they say, I don't know where they went to school, I didn't know where they lived until I got the birth certificate. I didn't know they were born in that place. And for me, that's heartbreaking, because that person's gone and they can't tell us anymore. And therefore, let's get that down. Let's write people's wishes, write people's stories. And for me as a celebrant, if I stand there and deliver a service and I sat and spoke to the person and they gave me their story, I know when I stand there that every word I'm saying is correct and accurate, and that this is their story and this is what they wanted told. That's really special.
Yeah, my gran wrote her own eulogy, and she also dictated her life into cassettes, tapes.
Oh,
Yeah.
fabulous.
And she, as I say, had it all planned of what was to be said about her at her funeral, which we all took the mick at the time. We all thought it was really quite amusing that she would have written it herself about what, and yet now I'm like, how sensible was that?
Yeah.
So it really does make a difference, because when we came to my mom's, which was more recently, and then it's, well, what do we write? And then again, we were picking everybody's brains, because my mom got dementia and therefore couldn't necessarily tell her life story.
Yeah.
Thankfully, her brothers were around, and her husband, my dad, was around. And so together we sort of managed to piece the story. But would she have said more than we did? Then probably yes, but we didn't know it. Because as you say, you don't often ask. They're not conversations that you have. Most of the time, your parents are looking at what you're doing as their children. You don't go through, so how was school for you? Who are these people? Unless, of course, they're still surrounded by some school friends and they tell those stories, in your presence. But it's not a conversation. I don't think that families, certainly not that I'm aware of, would sit and have. But you've actually, again, you promote people talking to you and actually speaking to you about their life before they die, so that you are getting it firsthand.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dog's snoring in the background. I don't know if you can hear her, but she makes a terrible noise. I need to put her in the other room.
Oh.
Apologies.
Yeah, and I think, for the family, when they know somebody's written their wishes, and I will go and sit and I will talk to them about every aspect of their funeral, and that will start with, where do you want it held? There is no right or wrong place to hold a service. Where would you like it to be? For me, I'm happy to deliver a service anywhere, but the ones I know had the biggest impact are the ones that aren't held at a crematorium. We never used to go there for the service. We used to hold it in the church, and then we would just have a short service at the crem for committal. And now, we've shifted it all to the crematorium, and some of the new ones are beautiful spaces, but they're still they still don't wrap you in a warm hug. Whereas your local pub, where they went once a week for their family Sunday lunch, or your village hall where they went to bingo every Thursday night, or your village green where they organise a summer fete every year, or your back garden, which is beautiful, where they grew the plants, you know, those flowers have been there, those trees have been established by them. Those places are really special and really meaningful. So why not hold the service there? So I start right at the very beginning and I write everything down and I come away and I type it all up. And, you know, I sort of imagine, I say to them, right, we've got a big bowl here and you're going to pick out exactly what you want and tell me what's right for you. And I write that all down. And then I write the service that we've agreed and their story within that and how that will all work. We always leave room for family and friends if they want to contribute later when the time comes, because that's really important to me. It's you know, if it's my funeral, it's my funeral, but it's the people left behind that are grieving and need that time. So therefore they need to be able to play a part in it. So we always have that within it. But then once it's all typed up, I send it back to them and they check it and we change it and we do whatever we need. And then they sign it and they place it with their will. And they tell their family it's there and they know where it is, it's secure. And when the time comes, the family don't have to worry about thinking about all those things. What music did they like? Did they want a poem? I don't know. What poem did, well, they like poetry, but what poetry did they like? That is all taken away from them. And at a time where all we really want to do is crawl in a corner and grieve, we don't want to be dealing with anything else. So when it's all done and we just lift it out and we say, right, this is what's happening on the day. Would somebody like to say a poem? Would somebody like to say a few words there? It doesn't matter. You've got the option. You know, they thought one of you might like to organise the wake, but otherwise it will be here and this will happen. And then they just feel freed by it, the family. And it's a great gift. What a gift to give your family.
I always talk of it as being a gift as well, Ruth. I completely agree. Because as you say, they're grieving. It, for those left behind, it's potentially the worst time of their lives.
Yeah.
And during that pain, they're expected to just carry on and deal with everything. And they don't want to. They don't want to. And sometimes it's very, very hard if they're being asked to make all these decisions and answer all these questions, and they're just not engaged. Their brain isn't sort of engaged in where it needs to be at that time. And there are so many people, I feel, look back and regret some of the decisions, or say, well, it wasn't really what I would have wanted, but at the time I just went with what I was told to do because I didn't know any different. And I think it's one of the reasons I do these chats and speak to different people, different celebrants, and different will writers and planners, because everybody is actually unique in the way that they offer their services, as well as everybody in the world is unique as who they are. So to me, there's always somebody who will want a particular celebrant because they sort of they feel that connection with you. And I just love the fact that we're trying to get people to talk about making some plans, plan ahead, or just talk about end of life generally with your family, so that if anything does happen, they at least have an idea of what to do and how to honor you. Because I feel, with my mum, as I said, it was fairly recently, it was an honor to put the funeral and things together and all sort of speak about her, etc. But there'd been so much planning in advance, because that's what I do, even though a lot of those plans hadn't come from my mum's mouth because she couldn't speak them. A lot of it had already been put in place. We already sort of knew what we were going to do because we'd got a bit of a timeline. We knew that my mum was suffering and progressively getting worse, and therefore we were able to start planning earlier. So when she died, we could just sit with that at least for a time, and go through that process of grieving, and then honor her with the celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it is really important that the celebrant and the family are right for each other. I try to only work with funeral directors unless the family requests me, then I'll work with anybody. But I only try to work with the ones that say, you know, we'd like you to work with this family because we think you're right for them. You know, we think this family will benefit from you. And that for me is that makes my life easier, because I know when I walk in the door that I'm going to get on with that family, you know, and that we're going to have a rapport, and I don't have to work at that at all for them, which is really helpful. Whereas, you know, and I heard an awful story recently of a celebrant who went into a family and they said, right, the opening words, A, B, C, or D, that's your choices, and committal words, A, B, C, or D, and closing words, A, B, C, or D. And the family were like, I'm sorry. And they said, well, that's, you know, you choose which one. And I say those words. And that to me is heartbreaking, because that is not the way that it should be. You know, those words aren't relevant to that person, and they should always be written from scratch and be absolutely unique to that person. And so, you know, it is important. And for me, it's important that people shop around for their funeral director. They shop around for their funeral celebrant, or their member of the clergy, whoever they choose to have. Just like flowers, exactly the same. You know, not every florist will create the same types of flowers, and therefore you shouldn't just go with the first choice. You should shop around, you should look at the prices, you should look at what they offer, and then pick the one that's right for you. And I think that's really key. And I've got one undertaker who says that actually you should choose your celebrant before you choose your funeral director. You should allow them to help you to choose, because they will direct you in the right place. And actually, that's quite an interesting way of thinking about it, but they're not wrong. You know, there's definitely room for that within it.
So a lot of your work you get from funeral directors, but some of it families could contact you directly.
Yeah, so there's a real mix. And actually, because I've been a celebrant for 6 years and have delivered a lot of services, there are people that have been to my services and therefore ask for me now. There are people that I've done their family members, so they ask for me. So sometimes I've worked with them with one funeral director, and then I work with them with another one later on. But probably it's probably heading more to a 50-50 split now, of them asking for me or the funeral director recommending me. So yeah, it's a good split, and people will find me through my social media or through my website.
Well, that was the next question, is how do they get hold of you? So can you give out your contact details? And I'll also put...
Yeah, so my website's Ruth Jewell funeralcelebrant.co.uk. And no, Ruth Jewell Celebrant.co.uk. Get it right. The funeral wasn't in there originally. I thought I might do weddings, but I changed my mind. So Ruth Jewell Celebrant.co.uk, and then I'm Ruth Jewell Funeral Celebrant on my social media. So I'm fairly, you know, it's an unusual surname. It's very easy to find around. So yeah, I'm very active on my social media.
Well, that's lovely, and it's been really good of you to speak with me about it. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all the best with your huge project.
Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely to talk to you, and we managed to have lots of giggles.
I'll speak to you soon.
Take care. Thank you.